What's up guys, Control here, and today I'm going to be talking about the upcoming balance changes that were just released at the end of last month. So these are really relevant because they're going to be changed on February 5th. Today's the 1st, so the season ended. And a lot of people actually got their finishes in Wild for the Open to qualify with Even Shaman or, not so much Odd Rogue, mostly Even Shaman. But as you guys are going to see soon, that's a deck that has been nerfed quite heavily. So it's still viable, but it's a deck that's been knocked down a little bit for sure. Anyways, so we're going to talk about individually what cards they're changing and stuff. I've already looked at these, I already know what the changes are, and I have opinions on them, but I'm just going to show them with you guys now. So first off, Cold Blood will cost 2 up from 1. So I personally think that they're doing this just because of Baku, so again in Baku. That's going to be a huge theme for this specific set of nerfs, very, very big ones. Especially ones that kind of affect wild decks is going to be, just the whole concept of Gen and Baku are going to be the reasons why these classic and basic cards are getting nerfed, which I'll talk about. Well, I guess I can talk about right now. I think it's very, very unhealthy. You see the first 2 nerfs here. You see Flame Tongue Totem will cost 3 up from 2. Cold Blood will cost 2 up from 1. So this is directly because of how strong the upgraded hero powers are. I don't think either of these cards are broken in and of themselves. I think it's more so the fact that you have a guaranteed 2/2 weapon with Rogue that makes Odd Rogue way too strong. And I think it's the fact that you have a guaranteed 1 mana totem in Even Shaman that makes Flame Tongue Totem too strong. So individually, I think these cards are very strong, but they're just kind of boosted by the archetypes that are created by Gen and Baku. And I think these cards are just very unhealthy for the game, because in the long run, there's just going to be more and more cards that are going to be poured into these decks in Wild, and so either they can continuously just nerf cards that are going to make it too strong, or they can just change Gen or Baku. So in the context of changing Gen and Baku, there's a few things you can kind of suggest. You could be like, well, why don't you just make Gen and Baku 1/1s? Well, that would be a nerf that wouldn't matter that often. It would sometimes indefinitely decrease the win rate of decks that it's running by a little bit. But I think a much simpler way for a lot of the decks is just to go ahead and change what the hero powers do. So for Rogue, for example, instead of having a 2/2 hero power, you could just make it a 1/3 hero power. And that would make it significantly weaker, albeit still very consistent, which is kind of what you're buying into if you're buying the Gen and Baku kind of thing. I believe Gen for Shaman is a little bit more difficult to balance because, well, you can't really go ahead and just get the totems. So my suggestion for Gen would just be to change Thing from Below. And I think the Flame Tongue change is fair for that reason, in that you can't really change Gen for Even Shaman without removing the totems. Because even 0/1 totems are really, really good and still synergize with the whole deck. This Even Shaman is kind of just like a huge jumble of synergy cards. Get a bunch of Jades and you have a bunch of cards that synergize with totems and being ahead on board. So I think that Even Shaman's really tough to do, so I would say change the cards there. But for other ones like Odd Paladins, so Paladins Baku hero power, you can just make it 2/2 or a 1/2 instead of 2 1/1s. I think Odd Warrior should definitely be changed to a 3 armor hero power to be in line with Hunters. But I would personally suggest a balancing of the odd hero powers. The even ones definitely get a little bit more tricky, because what do you really do then? You could change individual cards, or you could just completely remove Gen and Baku from the game, and that would kind of fix that. But that's a little touching point there. I just think they're very, very problematic cards. And another really important part is I think they lead to really unfun, stale gameplay. So this is something that I've been talking about for quite a while, in that I think that since Gen and Baku have come out, my enjoyment of the game has gone down quite a bit because, well, they're just very simple games. They're very simple decks to play in general, and the gameplay is very, very similar, because if you're playing a Gen or Baku deck, almost every game is going to be, well, you're playing a Gen deck, you're going to hero power on 1 every time, play a 2-drop on turn 2, or your hero power again, then turn 3 you're going to hero power and play a 2-drop every single time. In a Baku deck, you're just going to play a 1-drop, then you're going to hero power, then you're going to play a 3-drop, or you're going to play a 1-drop and hero power. And there's almost no variation. It leads to very stale gameplay, and it leads to really easy patterns for newer players to kind of just memorize and just grind reps with, which I personally find very frustrating because it lowers the amount of skill that's required to do well in this game significantly. Yesterday, for example, my stream was basically just spectating people who were trying to qualify for the Wild Open. We did like a Watchstone-esque stream. And we watched a lot of Even Shamans who, 1, played a lot of bad cards in their decks, and 2, did not play very well. win a lot of games. Why? Just because you can kind of just recognize the pattern of play green cards, don't float mana, flood the board, and have all of your synergy cards just be overwhelming enough to kind of win you the game. And that was a very common trend that a lot of even shamans qualified, not necessarily by playing that well, but just by jamming a lot of games and playing really strong cards. So I personally think that they're very boring cards that lead to very, very similar gameplay, and I personally don't find that very fun. I don't think there's too many people that would just queue up on ladder, play against an even shaman, and say they're having fun. It's not like, oh, well, I'm playing on ladder, what deck do I want to queue into? Oh, great, I get another even shaman, woohoo. It's usually like, oh fuck, I have to play against an even shaman. This is going to be a really fun game. I hope they don't play a 0 mana 5/5 on turn 4. That's kind of how that goes. So I think for the game's long-term health, for the player base who plays more than like 2 or 3 hours a day, Gen and Baku being changed significantly would really help a lot of us have a lot more fun. Anyways, back to Cold Blood though. This card is nerfed directly because of just Baku, right? It makes Odd Rogue really good. It's arguably the best card in Odd Rogue. 1 mana, deal 4 damage on a minion, say like an Argent Horse Rider with Divine Shield that has charge, is very, very powerful. A very common way to win games. So this being removed, I would say, is a pretty big hamstring to Odd Rogue and will make the deck significantly weaker, I would say. Albeit still playable. It's very similar to the change of Flame Tongue. But before we move to that, I will say that I do not agree with the Cold Blood change. I think that Cold Blood should stay as a 1 mana card, and I think it was fair for Odd Rogue to have this. I think that it's a pretty big deal that the deck doesn't get it now. I don't even think it's just for Odd Rogue, for other aggro rogues in general. Just a Temple Rogue as an archetype. You're thinking like Miracle Rogue, stuff like that in Wild. Cold Blood being 2 mana kind of just kills those decks a lot of the time because you need the 4 damage to really get there and win. So I think that going ahead and making this 2 mana kills a lot more than just Odd Rogue. And since this is a classic basic card, this is really just unhealthy. Like, why are they doing this to answer a card that isn't even permanently in their standard format? They're literally nerfing a standard basic card to answer a card that's not in standard, which makes absolutely no sense to me. It is in standard, but it's not in standard forever. Baku and Gen will rotate to Wild eventually, and Cold Blood will stay 2 mana. Which to me just seems ridiculous. Like, this just makes no sense. Anyways, I completely disagree with the Cold Blood nerf, and I don't like it. I think it's a bad idea and a terrible direction for the design team to go. Or the balance team, I guess. Next up, Flaying Tongue mana. Flaying Tongue Totem will cost 3 mana up from 2. This one I will agree with. I think this is fine. Again, we were talking about Gen being really hard to balance for Shaman. So I think taking some of the cards and making them a little bit weaker is a better idea. Flame Tongue is in the top 3 most powerful cards for me and even Shamans, so those would be Thing from Below, Devolve, and Flame Tongue Totem. I think those are the 3 most broken cards in the deck. And I think I'm fine seeing Flame Tongue get nerfed. I personally would like to see Thing from Below or Devolve nerfed more. Like, this is the 3rd one on my chopping list for those. Find Devolve to be a card that the deck really just should not have, and I think that Thing from Below is really just another corridor creeper and is really unhealthy for the game, personally. So Devolve, I would like to see it be 3 mana, or even 1, to be honest. Like, I don't really care if Control Shaman gets it, because they do need a bone. But I would prefer to see Devolve nerfed over this, and I would prefer Thing from Below to have an effect that says either it gets nerfed to like a 2/5, or just loses taunt and can stay as a 5/5, or it only gets buffed when it's in your hand. But I think Thing from Below needs to change. This will be a pretty significant nerf to even Shaman though, so maybe those 2 cards don't need to be changed at all. This will move the deck from being like a solid tier 1 deck to probably a mid to high tier 2 deck, just because of how good it is against aggressive decks in Wild. The lack of Flame Tongue is really going to hurt its slow matchups. So think about the matchups like Big Priest, like the Warlock matchups. They're really going to get hamstringed a little bit by Flame Tongue Totem being out of the game. Just think about how often, if you're playing even Shaman, you're going to have like, a Totem Golem and a Totem up. That's your first 2 turns. Then a Warlock just plays Doomsayer. And then you just have to play Flame Tongue to answer it and clear it. And then you're just ahead on board and happy. Well, Flame Tongue's 3 mana, man. You can't do that in even Shaman, so it's going to be awkward for you to clear that. You're going to have 4 damage like Crackle or something instead of Flame Tongue. It's just a lot worse. So Doomsayer is going to get a lot better. People are still playing even Shaman in the slow decks. So I think this nerf is good, and I'm happy about it. Yeah, that's basically all I have to say. I think this one's a good nerf. Next up, Equality costing 4. This makes no fucking sense. Like, I get that you can't nerf it to 3 because of Baku, but again, it's the whole thing. Why the fuck are you nerfing classic basic cards just because you printed these 2 mistakes of Gen and Baku? This makes no fucking sense. 4 mana quality is so unplayable. This is just honestly, I just want to puke when I see this. This is just going down the priest train of having to print removal every expansion for Paladin now. Like, why not just balance the game properly, man? You don't need to make a quality 4 mana. Wild Pyro quality is fucking 6 mana now. 6 mana Wild Pyro quality. All that's going to happen now is Paladin, every expansion is going to get some new cool AoE card that you're going to have to buy every single time. Instead of just having solid classic basic removal that the class should have, which it did for a long time. But now equality's for some reason going to 4 mana, which makes no fucking sense. I absolutely hate this, and I think this makes absolutely no sense. Next up, Hunter's Mark. This one makes even less sense because the reason you would change Hunter's Mark is because the card is too strong in Standard. Okay? And I don't really play Standard, but I've been talking to people who do and looking at deck lists, and good players are cutting Hunter's Mark from their Hunter's decks. It's not even like one of the best 30 cards you can run in Hunter right now, and it's getting nerfed. Like, what the fuck? If you think 1 mana Hunter's Mark is too good, why aren't you nerfing Candle Shot to 2 mana? Why don't you change one of the non-classic basic cards that enables this card to be really good? Like, how the fuck does this make any sense? Who's sitting here and going, let's make Hunter's Mark 2 mana and completely unplayable forever, instead of just saying, well, Candle Shot's a really good anti-aggro card that ends up being a little bit too good in slow matchups as well when used in Unition with Hunter's Mark. Well, let's nerf the one that's classic basic that's going to be shit forever then, instead of making Candle Shot 2 mana and making Hunters have to think if they really want to put a 2 mana 1/3 weapon in their deck to counter aggro and sometimes be good against slow decks. Nah, fuck it, dude. Let's just make Hunter's Mark 2 mana because, why the fuck do we want to think about anything? That's basically it. Yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah, you're right. Hunter's Mark was 0 mana, man. This joins the ranks of, what was that card that was nerfed twice? Shit. The Quest. The Rogue Quest. I don't really know what else to say, though, man. Like, these two nerfs just trigger me so much, man. The Cold Blood nerf pisses me off enough. I think Flame Tongue's fair. But these two, just like, what the fuck are you guys doing design-wise, man? Like, come on. Just, really? All this is telling me, like, these 4 nerfs... All this is telling me is they're making you buy packs every expansion. That's it. They just want to sell fucking packs. That's it. Every expansion will just print some new cards that you have to buy, and that's all they're telling me. They don't want you to be free to play. They want you to just spend a fuck ton of money on this game. And while it makes sense, it's just so disheartening, man. Like, it's really upsetting. I don't like this at all, and I think this is just like a bullshit cop-out. The last one makes sense. 6 mana Spellstone, I think this is perfectly fine. Emerald Spellstone in Standard is just way too strong, so I think this nerf is fine. But overall, like, I don't really have too much to say about this. I think it's just like a good solid nerf that's fine. It ruins Hunter and Wild, but in Standard this is fair, and I think this is a good nerf because the card at 5 mana is just ridiculous. Overall, these nerfs leave me with a pretty sour taste in my mouth. I really wish that they would address Gan and Baku instead of just nerfing their classic basic cards, and this direction is super unhealthy. I really wish that they would take Brian Kibler's suggestion and just making a rotating classic basic set instead of having the same one over and over again and having to nerf these cards. If they just had not a rotating classic basic set, sorry, but a rotating core set where that changes up every so often, I think that would make the game a lot fresher. It would make it more fun to play, and I think that it would make it a lot easier to balance as well. And so we don't have to see stuff like this. Like, this is just gross, man. Honestly, like, these nerfs are just disgusting, dude. Like, I can't look at this and just, I can't look at the Hunter's Mark and the quality and just be okay with this. This is just fucked up. There's really, like, nothing else to say. So, TLDR, again, Baku probably need to change. Cold Blood is a bad nerf. I don't like this. Flame Tongue is a good nerf. I like it. Equality, Hunter's Mark are both terrible nerfs. And Spellstone's very fair. I think Spellstones and Flame Tongue are, like, the 2 good nerfs. 3 of them were bad, though. That's basically it.